Logan Ury, I've been waiting so long for this conversation.
Yay. Well, I'm really happy to be here, and it's nice to reconnect after all those years.
So many years. So we worked together at Dan Ariely's Irrational Labs. You were with Google back then. I was interning in behavioral economics. Let's just start there and then I have to run to this relationship thing that you're doing and your TED Talk experience. But let's start with behavioral economics. How did you get to behavioral economics and what were you doing there?
Yeah, so I studied psychology at Harvard, and I had a secondary in women and gender studies. So I was super interested in all of the different things that affect how we think. And when I was at Google, I heard that Dan Ariely was there, and I had the opportunity to work with him on a project. And he was working internally on this team called the Irrational Lab. And I was part of a marketing rotational program. So that meant you started as an associate product marketing manager, you did an assignment for a year, and then after a year, you got 7 minutes, literally 7 minutes with the CMO of Google, and you could ask her questions or get her advice on what to do for your second rotation. And
Wow.
for me, I prepped for many hours, and I gave her this 7-minute pitch on why I should be allowed to work with Dan Ariely and the Irrational Lab team. And she liked it, and she created the headcount for it. And after that, I joined the team, and then I later led the team within Google.
Wow. Okay. So Irrational Labs, give me 2, 3 sentences. What was it about? What were some of the things that were happening that are interesting?
So Irrational Labs, what I loved about it was that it takes this very academic field of behavioral economics, which
Yep.
you know, but for your viewers is the science of how we make decisions. And the key idea behind behavioral economics is we're not rational, we're irrational. We often
Yep.
make these mistakes in our decision making, but luckily we make them in these predictable ways. So if you can understand, okay, people have something called the planning fallacy. No matter how long you think something's going to take to get a project done, it'll probably take longer. We always underestimate it because we don't think about the things that come up. So there's these very common mistakes that we make in decision making. And if you understand those mistakes, you can help people avoid them. So we worked across different teams at Google. I think we worked with over 52 teams. And we would each one of them say, okay, what do you want the users to do? What's happening now? What are the cognitive biases that maybe are causing that? And then how can we redesign, whether it's the product or the
Right.
onboarding flow, so that the user will actually take the intended action.
Yeah,
And
I mean, it's an art. It's not
yeah,
it's on one hand, it's a science. There's a bunch of academic studies, mainly through Dan Ariely and Kahneman and Tversky and all those amazing academics. But at the end,
yeah,
but now Dan is saying, okay, now let's see how this can be translated into the tech world and actual consumer behavior. And I can talk about behavioral economics with you for hours, but what's really special here is you branched off from there into another field in psychology. Talk to me about that divergent.
yeah. So while I was doing the Irrational Lab thing and just learning so much about behavioral economics and just loving the chance to do applied behavioral economics, I also was single, and I was on the dating apps, and I was on Hinge, and I was on Tinder and Coffee Meets Bagel, and I was just trying to figure out like what is happening in love. And I saw that all around me, lots of people had the same questions. And
Yeah.
I started this series called Talks at Google Modern Romance, where I would bring in experts from around the world to talk to us about love. And the videos became pretty popular. Within Google, it was pretty popular. And I was like, okay, this is a thing. People need to know about love and the changing way that we're dating. And that kind of turned into a bigger project where I left Google. I went to Airbnb. I then left Airbnb. And finally, I said, I'm going to do this full time. And now for the last 3 years, I've been working full time on applying lessons from research and lessons from behavioral economics to dating to helping people find love.
Okay, so before we go into the TED also experience, talk to me about love. What are
So
some of the things that you
what do you want
found
to
out
know?
about love? Well, I want to know everything.
Yeah.
But tell me, some 2 or 3 things that I might not be thinking of. in the greater spectrum of what is love and what is relationships in 21st century?
Yeah. So one of the big themes that comes up in the research is paradox of choice. I'm sure you've heard that term, but the idea there is that we think that more options are better and we always choose to have more options, but oftentimes too many choices can be really overwhelming and either leads us feeling full of regret or making no decision at all. So dating today truly is harder than ever before because of all the options. And another thing that I think about is how people are making the decision about who to date and who to settle down with and should I get married. And I like to think that relationships are a series of decisions. At each decision point, you could make mistakes because of these cognitive biases. So if you understand what those are, you can help avoid them.
Right.
For example, there's something called maximizer satisficer framework. Some people say, I need to look at every single option and figure out the perfect one, and then I can make my choice. And other people say, I have a set standard, and as soon as I find something that meets that, I'll accept it. And those people are called satisficers. And when you're a maximizer and you're dating, it can be really hard to find someone because you're always looking for the next thing, the perfect thing. So how can you avoid being a maximizer and date more like a satisficer?
That's so fascinating. One of the things that I've been pondering is, I can't help but realize that our whole culture is shifting over the last 100 years or so, where 100 years ago when you got married, I don't know, 18 to 20 or maybe even before that, and then you had a career in a certain field, you grow old together, you have children, etc. Today, I'm looking at myself and my friends, we're going to go through several careers, we're going to move around the world, we're going to change our perspective on different things. Is there some thought of how relationships are starting to form in this new world? Are they the same as before?
Yeah, relationships are definitely changing for a lot of the reasons you mentioned. So one of the key things that I'll point out from what you said is people are getting married much later. So there's an idea that relationships used to be a startup. Two people come together early in their lives and they come together and they create a relationship. And now marriages are more like a merger. Two people who are fully formed come together later in life when they each have their independent identities, their personalities, their habits, and they're now forming a union. And as I'm sure you can imagine, a merger is in some ways more complicated than a startup.
I was just about to say that in the tech world, mergers are not, usually they don't work. Even if all signs point to yes, there's some internal conflict that somehow arises.
Absolutely.
So
what do
you do with that?
Yeah, people get married later. Some of the other changes, you used to get married to the person that your family recommended. That was through a matchmaker or your parents. That was on whether your plot of land was next to the other person's plot of land, who offered the most camels for your daughter's hand in marriage, the dowry, all these things. That's totally different. Now it's the same amount of work. In fact, it's more, but it falls on us. So we have a lot more pressure to get this decision right. We have a lot more choices to make, to choose from. And I think that if you're getting married at 30, when your personality is a lot more defined and you have a lot more preferences, likes and dislikes, it can be harder to find a person who feels like the right fit.
Interesting. Okay, so within the relationship spectrum, you're also very heavily involved in breakups. And actually, actively on Facebook and social media, you're helping friends go through difficult situations of their own. Talk to me a little bit about that. How did you even get started with this? And what are some common themes that you can now see?
Yeah, thank you for asking me about breakups. I feel like I don't get asked about it a lot, but it is really a passion point of mine. One reason I care
passion point of yours. Okay, watch out.
Yeah, one reason I care about it so much is I think if my goal is to help people get into happy and healthy relationships or epic relationships, one of the best ways to do that is by helping them get out of mediocre or bad relationships.
Which is often so hard to do, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. So some of the things I've done in the area of breakups, I do breakup consulting. So people come to me and say, I need to decide if I should break up with this person. We go through the pros and cons. I learn about their history. I learn about their patterns. Are they somebody who's always breaking up with people? Are they someone who's always staying in relationships too long? We work through that. And then if they decide that that's the right decision for them, then I help them actually plan out when are you going to have the conversation? What are you going to say?
Wow.
What are you going to do immediately afterwards? What are you going to do 3 weeks later? And we really just create a goal setting plan to help them pull this off.
So, it's sort of a combination of, it's not really therapy or analysis. It's like a friend, a mentor, and a therapist all at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's ideally what a really good coach is. And I think,
Coach, okay.
yeah, not to be in pitching mode, but I think that's where the behavioral economics comes in. It's saying like,
Yes.
one of the key ideas in behavioral economics is awareness is not enough. If you know that cookies are bad for you, it doesn't stop you from eating cookies. You need to actually create an environment and have a plan that helps you stop eating cookies. And in this way, it's knowing you want to break up with someone is not enough. You need a plan to actually go and have that conversation, deal with the repercussions, go through the decoupling process, all of that.
So what are the common pitfalls that people face in breaking up? Because I'm sure that over time you can see some commonalities in human behavior that are not allowing us to sort of maximize our potential for happiness.
Yeah, so my philosophy on breakups, and this is not all people, but many people fall into one of two categories, being a ditcher or a hitcher. And these are terms I came up with to describe ditchers are people that enter into relationships at around the 3 to 6 month mark. They say, she's not exactly right for me, and I have to be honest with myself, and they come up with reasons to leave, and they always ditch a relationship before giving it a chance. And a hitcher is someone who gets into these serious long-term relationships and often stays too long past their expiration point and has trouble breaking it off. And there's lots of interesting reasons why both of these people do what they do. But in my work, I try to help ditchers stay longer to realize that actually every relationship has problems. Right. You need to give something a chance. You need to let it develop. You need to mature. You need to get in your reps in terms of learning how to be in a relationship. And with hitchers, sometimes I tell them, this is a great relationship. It's going through a little bad spot and you should stay. Or sometimes I say, I think you've been in this relationship too long and you need to get out of it, and I'll help you do that.
And I'm sure, it is difficult because you are getting one side of the story, right? You're getting one perspective and you have this whole other life that's maybe even experiencing the relationship in a different way. So where's the line with that? And how do you balance that? How do you mitigate that lack of information?
You mean like I'm only hearing one person's side of the story?
Right.
Yeah, that's absolutely part of the work. And I kind of have to take everything people say with a grain of salt. And I also have to understand that, if they're going through a hard moment, I'm hearing the negative version of the story. I'm only hearing one person's side of the story. But what I have tried to develop is a skill around pattern recognition. So even if one person says something and I realize it's only 50% of the story, I can recognize that as, this is a similar pattern to what I saw with these 3 other people. Here's what they said. Here's what they then did. Here's what happened. And I can use that pattern recognition to give them good advice, even if I'm lacking some elements of the story.
Amazing. And then you're invited to this TED residency in 2018 and given the opportunity to do something that any entrepreneur in any profession could only dream of, being on the TED stage and giving a professional talk. What was it like? Walk me through it.
Yeah, TED was a fantastic opportunity. I remember when I was applying for a job in 2017, they asked, what are some of your life goals? And I said to give a TED talk and to read a book that my parents would then, to write a book that my parents would then read.
Which is also in the works.
Yeah, in the last 3 years, I've been able to do both of those things, and the book will come out next year. So I feel really excited about that. And I think that's a good lesson that even if you don't always accomplish the dreams that you set out to accomplish, at least just saying them out loud and being audacious gives you a greater chance of maybe achieving them. And so with TED, I was a resident in 2018. I was part of a cohort of around 30 people. It's just so fun to be in New York, be in the New York office, have access to amazing people doing things like photography exhibits, architecture, environmental, financial initiatives. Yeah. And at the end, as you said, we gave a TED Talk, and it was just such a great experience. And it really helped launch this phase of my life.
How long do you prepare for a TED Talk?
So we really started, I would say, probably week 1 or 2 of the 4-month residency, thinking about what's the through line of your talk, who's your audience, what do you want people to say after they hear it. And I probably went through 12 or 13 drafts because I was still figuring out the thesis of my work while also trying to give the talk. So
Yeah.
it was challenging, but it was really, I mean, I think creativity really thrives when you have constraints. And I had the constraint of having to deliver a talk on June 1st of that year.
Wow, that's just unbelievable. And so what's next? So you're writing the book. You gave a TED talk. You're a world expert on relationship and breakup. So what now?
Yeah, so I'm finishing the final edits of the book and going back and forth with my publisher on that. And the book will come out Valentine's Day 2021. And
Couldn't think differently.
yeah, I recently joined Hinge as their director of relationship.
Whoa. So we talked about this, that my girlfriend and I, we met on Hinge, and so we always joke that our relationship is sponsored by Hinge.
Yeah, I love that. And so many of the weddings I go to now that people met on Hinge. And
It's unbelievable. Is this the future, Logan? Is this where things are moving towards?
I think the future is now. So there's research from Michael Rosenfeld of Stanford about how people meet. And as of last year, more people met through dating apps than any other form for the first time.
Unbelievable. So if 30 years ago it was at a bar or in the library or a coffee shop, today it's mostly on dating apps.
Yeah.
Wow. Where does AR come into here? And I'll just paint you a picture that I was talking with a friend a couple of days ago. Is it going to be that in the future, it's an app like Hinge, we'll just have our smart glasses and we'll be able to have dinner as a date through an app? And, if we don't like it, then we can just, swipe right, swipe left and move on to the next dinner. I mean, how is it going to be?
I haven't thought too much about dating in AR, but I do feel like in this moment, you and I are recording this during coronavirus. We're both sheltering in place. There's been a huge rise in video chat dating. And
okay.
what's fascinating about that is people are saying, like, I'm still swiping on the apps and matching with people. I do want to get to know them. Normally I would say, let's go for a walk, let's get coffee. I can't do that now. So people are using video chats for that. And it's possible that even after coronavirus ends, that people will basically have this half date or first date that happens over video chat before deciding to meet up in person.
Does that make it a little bit more honest? Because, there is this whole infatuation phase and the physical attraction that can sometimes mask, when people are not emotionally right for each other. So is this sort of a way to put the physical aspect aside and see whether mentally and emotionally we connect?
Yeah, I think that there's pros and cons. So first of all, I don't think that the physical attractiveness piece goes away. I think you're still evaluating the person over video chat to decide if you're attracted to them. And it's probably, for better or for worse, a large part of your decision. One thing I've heard that has actually stuck with me is a client of mine in the dating coaching world who, usually sleeps with people right away, and physical affection is something that she engages with early on. And I'm not judging her in any way, just like that's her pattern. And now because of coronavirus, she's forced to take a step back and move a lot slower. And she's been noticing that her relationships have been developing in a deeper, more vulnerable way. So I think for some people, being able to video chat first helps them focus on the emotional connection before deciding what's our sexual chemistry like.
That's fascinating. I mean, Logan, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Best of luck with the book and the TED Talk. I mean, everything is just, it's amazing. And I'm so happy that we had the chance to work together. What was it? I think 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. Unbelievable. And it was such a great time. Before we leave, I am going to put you on the spot one time. And I want you to tell me 3 words that you would best describe yourself as, or that you wish other people would describe you as.
Okay, great. Sure. And also, thank you for having me on the show. It's been fun to watch where your career goes, and I hope
Thank you.
Again. Okay, 3 adjectives. Let's see. The first word that came to mind was tenacious.
Okay.
I think, just really sticking to things, having that point in my career where I was like, all right, I love this dating and relationship stuff. Let's see if I can turn it into a job.
Totally.
Passionate. I'm really passionate about the work that I do. I'm passionate about people finding love, and my interest in this has not waned, since I was 18 and I started being fascinated by relationships. And then third word that comes to mind is friend. I cared so deeply about my friends. I think friendship is my hobby. I just want the best for all the friends in my life. And I really spend a lot of time just engaging with and supporting and being supported by my friends.
Logan, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Really, really amazing. And I can't wait to read the book on Valentine's Day of next year.
Thank you. And thanks for thinking of me. Okay, bye.